好，各位在场嘉宾，大家好，欢迎大家回到会场。这个时段要开始的是事实查核的十字路 AI 是利器或是祸害这个场次。
I use Chinese or OK， 好，非常感谢主持人的介绍。那我是中正大学资工系王明宏。那我主要在做的研究领域是计算社会科学。那我们主要是用电脑科学的技术来协助辨识不实讯息、舆论操作以及相关的多媒体的仇恨言论。那很高兴今天能够到这个事实查核中心的亚洲论坛来做这个论坛的主持。那in this session, we have three speakers from first from Chequeado, Pablo Fernandez, and Aos Fatos, Tai Nalon, and Maldita, Carlos Echevarría. Yeah. So we are very looking forward from their insights because I have read their presentations. They use a lot of CS techniques, especially AI. For example, I remember one of them have used large language model to generate some reports and to identify some, for example, scams. So we are very looking forward to their presentation. And then we have a 20 minutes Q&A. And also you can use Slido to ask your question, and I will, after their presentation, we can have a more constructive conversation on this topic. Let's welcome Pablo Fernandez from Chequeado.
Yes, it's difficult to pronounce. It's Chequeado. Imagine Chequeado. Chequeado. Just in case it's fact-checked. Yes. And as I said yesterday, we don't have a mascot as cool as yours, but this is our mascot. It's kind of okay for a Latin American country. And this is Chequeado. Chequeado is the platform. We call it a platform, and I will tell you more in a minute, because it can be a platform or a suite. Imagine as Microsoft Office. You have Microsoft Office, and then you have Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Access, etc. Chequeado is like Office. And there you have a lot of different tools inside Chequeado. So that is like the concept. Keep that in mind while we move forward. This is something that I already said yesterday, but just in case, if we have new people in the room. We have been working since 2010. We are the first fact-checking organization in Latin America and the South. And we are also leading Latam Chequea, that is a network from our part of the world. This is important. I guess that this will be echoed during the panel. But we need automation because we need more time and resources. And as you know, writing a fact check or creating a fact check takes a long time. And here I'm talking mostly about fact checks of political claims, not necessarily images or videos or audio. They are connected, but for these tools, it's important the difference. I will talk about both, but it's important to keep that in mind. So there are repetitive tasks, as you know, that we can automate. And maybe this is kind of obvious right now because of ChatGPT and all the OpenAI kind of hype that we are living through. But we started doing this in 2016. 2017. So it was like a long time ago. And at that moment, no one knows what was AI, or someone knows, but in the public media, in the big media outlets, they didn't know how to talk about this. So maybe now it's obvious that usually we try to automate what is repetitive, what is something that maybe, in our case, a journalist is not the best use of their time. Yes? And just to be clear from the first moment, we think that AI can help journalists. It's there to help journalists, fact checkers. It's not there to replace them. Yes, that is important. And in our case, we have tested that during our time. Yes, we have been doing a lot of tools that helps to avoid our fact checkers to do work that maybe they find repetitive, boring, and even impossible to do. I will give you an example in a minute. And this is also important. And I guess here everyone knows this, but once again, it's important to highlight it. Disinformation travels much faster than fact checks. So response time is key. We need to be fast. Sometimes we know that it takes days to fact check something. But if we're able to put in the middle of the process things that accelerate that process, it helps. So it's not black and white. It's not black and white. It's not that this is a magic wand that will make everything happen in an hour. No, that is not the case. For better or for worse, our job is difficult. So it's not easy to be replaced by machines. Yes, and this is something that we talk not only between practitioners, but also with researchers, with people in technology. We are fact checkers here, but a lot of big companies were trying to do this automatically, and they couldn't. I don't know if that will be the case in 5 years, but at least right now, it's very difficult. But we focus on the things that maybe we can automate. Part of the process, as I showed yesterday, we have a method with different steps. So some steps of that method can have help from a machine, from software, yes? And the idea that I guess, once again, everyone here knows is that if you get in the narrative or in the public agenda as fast as possible, you will get more success. So the impact is bigger. So that is why we are trying to use this kind of tools. So here is what we are trying to do. And I have some other news besides this. This is the three main focus of our last few years. So this is our method. Just in case, this is our method since not day one, but since the day we published it. That was a long time ago. And in one way or another, most of the fact-checking organizations in Latin America, at least, use something similar. As I said yesterday, I don't know if it's going to work. Yes, I don't know if you see this. No, sorry, the number 5. I'm trying to highlight it. I don't know if it works. This number 5, check alternative sources, is something that, once again, for us is very important in Latin America because sometimes you cannot trust the official source. But so the three sentences that are highlighted, or the three steps in our method, are highlighted are the ones that we think that can be automated, at least in part. Once again, this is not 0 or 100%. There are a lot of gray areas. To select a sentence from the public debate is finding a claim, yes? So Argentina, just in case, we are 50 million people, but Argentina is really big in size. Maybe not as big as Brazil or the US, but it's big. So we need to cover all the country. We are based in the capital city. Our promise to the audience was we were going to fact check for sure things that were published in the beginning. I'm talking about almost 15 years ago, 13 years ago, was that we were going to cover 2 media outlets, two, and so 2 websites / newspapers and 2 TV shows that were in both sides of the polarized environment. Nowadays, with this tool, we can cover more than 30 media outlets, all the presidential speeches, all the Congress speeches, some list in Twitter. So what I was saying before, it's not only that maybe for some journalists reading all the websites, all the newspapers, seeing all the TV shows, it's not only, it can be boring, but it's impossible. Or it's possible, but you need to spend all day doing that. We want our newsroom to be doing that? Probably no. So what we are doing is covering the whole country in seconds. Because what our bot does is scraping content from every media outlet that we care about in every province and bringing to our newsroom the claims that it thinks that are fact-checkable. Yes? And one thing that was also related with what Tai says yesterday, there are some things in this line also in English, working in English, but when we started, there was nothing at all in Spanish. So yes, maybe nowadays it can be there, something working in Spanish. I think that it isn't, but we will have to wait more than 5 years. And 5 years in this is a lot. So we started doing this in Spanish. There was nothing out there in Spanish at that time, and I think that is still is not. Then assess its relevance. So it's important for us also to know these fact-checkable claims made sense to be fact-checked or not. So our algorithm that learn through machine learning why something is important, usually, and this is very important, usually now is successful. It brings to our newsroom claims that matter. And that wasn't the case 4 years ago. 4 years ago, sometimes it was wrong. Nowadays, the good problem that we have is that we have more claims that we can fact check. But that is a good problem. And now more than half of what we are publishing is brought to us by Chequeado. Yes, so without this, we wouldn't have this coverage. And the other one that is the number 4 here is something that is really difficult to do in a country like Argentina, and I guess that in most of the developing countries, to put it in a good way, is that the official source is not a standard source. So maybe one government, let's say that upload the content in a spreadsheet, then change the government and it upload it through an API, then change the government and upload it through a PDF. So it's really difficult, but we are working with that, trying to show, for example, imagine that the president is talking about poverty. The software brings the claim to our newsroom, but it also brings the official data related with that, yes? So that imagine that if you are in the newsroom, it can help you think if that makes sense to fact check or not. It's for official source. It's false, it's true. Of course, that is not the final rating, but it helps you to make a decision. This is, I already said this, but it's just in case it's developing house. We develop in Chequeado. In the beginning, it was only one person in our team doing this, only one developer. That was that was in charge also of maintaining our WordPress, of paying attention to our email infrastructure, to everything, to our servers. That was the only Mariano. He was great. And it was based on natural language processing. That also is something that maybe right now didn't need as much explanation as 6 years ago. But in a nutshell, just in case, is machines, sorry for the engineers in the room, but it's like machines understanding our language, yes? I know that it's not exactly that, but just to make it understandable for everyone. And we also work with machine learning, as I said, with this idea of making the tool understand what is fact-checkable and what is interesting for us. Chequeado, what is checked today is the first tool. That for us is like ancient history in a way. But it's the tool that we still use the most, and it's the most important. It's the one that I told you about that finds claims in every media outlet that we care about, yes? And it's also in the Congress and Senate. And actually, we have been updating this, for example, with, as I said before, with Twitter list or with YouTube programs. So now that we can, if something can be turned into a text, we can work with that. I will go faster because I'm running out of time. Yeah. This is, well, if someone here works in technology, you know this. When you get a model or a technology to understand what is, for example, a fact-checkable claim, the input doesn't matter. So we use Chequeado, what we check today, scraping content from media outlets, but also our newsroom asks us, okay, I have this PDF for 50 pages. Can I paste it in a website and highlight me the main claims? Yes. So we create a simple tool to do that. Yes. I won't have time to to talk about this, but it's very important. We try to focus a lot on what the newsroom need and not what was fancy and hype at that moment, because if not, in these 6 years, we have added crypto, blockchain, metaverse, and you lose your focus. Maybe you get some funding, yes, but you will lose your focus. So the focus and the priorities are very important. What is the priority? Help the fact checker, because if we help the fact checker, we have more impact because it will be faster and get to a biggest audience. So it's the same with text. We also have been doing a lot of live fact checking. That this is something that we did since 10 years ago, actually, the live fact check. But since 2019, and this is also something that we work with Full Fact from the UK. We were working together in a project. So everything that I'm telling you here, I'm telling you in 20 minutes, we tried everything. For example, for transcriptions, we tried Microsoft technology, Facebook technology, Google technology, some startups technology. And during this time, we were changing it. So even if for journalists was the same experience, behind in the back office, it was changing the system. Nowadays, we're using, for transcription, we are using Google, but that can change. Maybe in a year, we find that another tool is better. In Spanish, everything we're talking about here is in Spanish. And then Tai for sure will tell you more about Portuguese. But the thing is that we decided to focus in Spanish in the beginning because it was the language in our region that has the bigger amount of fact checkers. So we use this tool that transcript in real time. This is something that maybe today, if you use social media, you know that there are transcription tools embedded in social media right now. So you can record a video and it almost automatically, you can have a transcription of that. That wasn't the case in 2019 at all. But even with that being even more normal today, because if you have a short video, usually you have a transcription that is not perfect, but it worked. This was used in a lot of events like this, but it was also used, for example, in Brazil, because that was an agreement with Lupa. This was something that is kind of language agnostic, because we have the interface. And so that they told us, hey, we want to do this, and we said, okay, that is something that we can do, but most of what we are doing is in Spanish. I will move forward with this. This is something that is also a good example for me of listening to what the newsroom wants. They were listening a lot to videos in YouTube, and Desgrabador is the transcriptor in a nutshell. And so we find a way to add in a URL from YouTube to transcribe the subtitles. So having all the subtitles in one page. That is really simple, because the technology was there, the subtitles were there, but now this is being used by people from all around the world. That we appear really high when someone Google transcribe video. So even people that don't know Chequeado use this, because we decide to open this to the community, not only for fact checkers. So actually, it's most used by students. It doesn't matter. It may make no sense to show it here to you because it's in Spanish, but it also works in English. It's YouTube. Chequeado.com/desgrabador. So some key learnings for that, and then I have two more things. I have 3 minutes, so I'm going to run. Is you don't need a big team to work with automation, and that was true in 2016. Imagine now with ChatGPT, a lot of companies investing in OpenAI and other kind of tools. Open source is ideal, at least for our case, for not reinventing the wheel, and that is also related with not having a big team. If you are doing everything on your own, maybe you will need a big team. We use a lot of open source tools. Collaboration is key. We were working with a lot of universities and other fact checkers for this. Full Fact is one. We also work with Africa Check. There's Lee. And we keep working to make it grow. And this is something that we have been working on in the last couple of months. Actually, it's part of a project that we have with Maldita in the US called Chequeado. Imagine something like a fact checker, but focus on Latino and Hispano communities in the US. And this is a monitoring tool that helps us find misinformation in all that social networks that you have up there. Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, TikTok, Twitter, WhatsApp, YouTube, and the upload button so you can add something else. And this is something that it was needed for our allies in the US, yes? And there's another example. Of course, it's in Spanish, so for you, it won't make any sense. But here it says the picture of the Pope with that puffer, how you say it? I don't know, you understand. Chemtrails in Indiana, and it has some tools that were specific for that newsroom. For example, it can be exported to Trello. We use Trello a lot. So it was kind of also doing it specifically for what the needs of fact-checker were. So we are evolving all the time. Actually, this was made exactly thinking on what the newsroom wants, yes? And that is something that I think that is important for everyone to pay attention to. What do you want? What technology do you want? And once again, and with this I'm finishing, is try to focus on that. Because once again, if not, you will be doing blockchain 1 year, metaverse another year, and that is not the case, at least for us. And now the tool is being used in 8 countries, yes? Latin America, but also in Spain with Verificat that is using to debunk in a podcast. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much for Pablo precious sharing about their experience in Chequeado. And maybe we can start from next speaker, and we will have a Q&A session after the 3 presentation. So next is from Tai Nalon from Aos Fatos.
Hello. How are you all? I'm Tai Nalon, as he introduced. I'm the executive director at Aos Fatos. Well, a little technical problem that wasn't predictable, but okay. Yeah, I think that presenting after Pablo is a problem because they basically set the ground for fact checkers in, I think, in the whole world of what we are supposed to do right now with AI. And what are the priorities fact checkers have to have when deciding to invest in artificial intelligence, which is not something trivial. It's a decision that has to be well made because it's, 1, expensive. And 2, well, when you are from a country in the global south, it's easy for you to be somehow, how can I say, not as advanced as the rich world, let's put this way. So you have to prioritize, and we have to focus on what is more relevant for us. And in this case, at Aos Fatos' case, it is, of course, helping our team to be more productive, but most of all, helping people to get to know our work and to distribute it. Because in a continental country as Brazil, it's really difficult to get to some communities, like rural communities, or people that are outside the big cities in the northern or the northeastern regions in Brazil. So we have to figure out how to get to them. So basically, this is a set of tools that Aos Fatos has developed for the past 8 years, but mostly in the past 5 years, 6 years, which are the center of our automation program. So the first one and the main one, I would say, because it was kind of a revolution inside Aos Fatos for us to build, is Radar Aos Fatos, which is a monitor, is a public monitor, is there in our website, that in real time gathers information from WhatsApp, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We set a basic rules by theme. For instance, this one is democracy. So attacks against our democracy are being monitored by Radar right now. And it gives points to some pieces of what the tool thinks is misinformation that has the higher risk of being misinformation for us, the team, to analyze manually. So everything is human. Everything is human assisted. Nothing that we do is automatically published. I mean, we will never do that. We don't have the technology for that, and I don't think that we'll ever have. So, to make this clear, this is a public monitor, but it never says that something is blatantly false. It says it has a risk of being false or being misleading. And it sets some, ratings? Yes, ratings regarding the chances of being misinformation. So how that is built? It's kind of, I don't know what it is like this, but we as a team, that we know that we are having problems with some specific kinds of misinformation. For instance, COVID, the pandemic. We choose what theme we will monitor, and we connect with the platform's APIs, at least we used to with some of them, Twitter, mostly, but Facebook, Instagram. WhatsApp doesn't have an API, which is a problem, but we'll talk about it later. Telegram also. So we collect data from them, and then we clean. I'm sorry it is in Portuguese, but it was difficult to. And we analyze it. We have one methodology per network for us to investigate what is large scale, what are the proportions that some kinds of misinformation are having, and then it gives a rating from 1 to 5 if it is a high risk of being misinformation, or 6 to 10 if it doesn't that risky. So basically, this type 2, 3, and 4, which is collecting, cleaning, and analyzing, is AI powered. But the first one, the first one and the second one are human assisted. And of course, what is displayed on the monitor is displayed on the monitor. The results are that we were able with Radar to build a very nice investigative team in which we have data scientists, engineers, data journalists, of course, fact checkers, in order to identify trends during, for instance, the election cycle last year, but also during the pandemic and, well, any crisis we have to cover. So these are two examples of stories that we run after the attacks in January 8. One of them actually was published together with Washington Post. Basically, what we did was to investigate how much misinformation there was since 2021, when Bolsonaro, our former president, started most consistently attacking our democracy. So, yeah, these are some examples. And because of the January 8 attacks in Brasilia, we built a feature called Golpeflix, which makes a joke with Netflix, but for people that are trying to make a coup d'etat. So yeah, we gathered all the data that we had that was mapped by Ada at the time, put together, made a curation and put together in this special. You have the URL here if you want to see. It's in Portuguese, I'm sorry. But there are plenty of videos and photos and audios that circulated on social media during the months before the attacks first, to give us a sense of how crazy and completely out of reality these people were being informed through social media. These graphs reveal, basically, they are a result of our investigation with Washington Post, showing how social media in Brazil, social platforms, were really used, explored, and benefited from disseminating extremist content. And when I say extremist content, of course it is disinformation, but we know that not all disinformation is fact-checkable, it's verifiable. So we make this assessment as disinformation is something that is broader than what is fact-checkable, and this is the result. So things are starting to get really bad as the election was being at the election time, so it was last October. So you can have a sense on YouTube, Facebook, in the other graphs there are Twitter and WhatsApp. So, yeah. And then we have Fatima. Fatima is our chatbot. And it actually was the first artificial intelligence project at Aos Fatos, because in 2018, we made a project, a kind of clandestine project, actually, in which we built a chatbot for Twitter that was banned from Twitter 2 years after, because Twitter thought it was a spam, even though it was just sending fact checks to people that were sharing misinformation. But this is another story. What we have here now is a WhatsApp and Telegram-centered project in which users can, as we have seen yesterday, actually, many of you developing such projects to make people fact-check easier some things that they see on WhatsApp or Telegram. And at Fatima right now, we are trying, and we are being successful, but it's not ready yet, to use LLMs to basically be more responsive and more, because as Pablo was saying, in the Portuguese-speaking world, it's very difficult to find such technology. So if we had to wait for someone to develop such strategy, we wouldn't have chatbots, basically. Brazil is the most populous, is that a word? Well, it's more, it's the largest Portuguese-speaking country in the world. And basically, we should do that, or else no one would. So we are training Fatima to be more responsive according to LLM models. We are having good results, but it's not ready yet, because the chances of the artificial intelligence to make wrong assumptions it can get out of control really easily. So we are trying to delve into that right now. And, well, we are trying, but I think that by the end of the year, or perhaps next year, we'll have some launches to make, some news to share for you. So these are basic tips for you to for the ones who are interested in applying LLMs in their fact-checking efforts. So we start simple and improve. Basically, what Pablo said, you have to be patient. You have to focus, and it's really easy for you to try to capture the last trendsetters and lose focus on what you are doing. This is a long-term process. This is nothing that will be ready in a week or a month or in 6 months. Many funders want you to build that in a very timely way. It's not the way that we do. And don't reinvent the wheel. Use existing technology for you to accelerate your processes. Because if there's open source technology out there for you to develop your tools, much better. And Fatima is taking advantage of this right now. And then at Aos Fatos, we also have Escriba, which is the word, it's kind of transcriber, but it's actually another word in Portuguese that I don't know if there's a translation in English, but it's basically writer, but it's not a writer, it's a transcriber with editing models. But as I was saying, in the Portuguese-speaking world, it's very difficult to have accurate transcribers. And for large sets of audio, visual, and videos, and very heavy documents with audio, it's very difficult to find something that works and works fastly and accurately, and that is adapted to, for instance, a newsroom use with an editor, with the possibility of recognizing different speakers. All of this is done by Escriba. And one thing that is very actually nice for us is that because we don't have that much in Portuguese, we were able to make this a funding way, a way to fund ourselves, because it's cheap. It's something that we are more inclined to offer to our community, but we also, in some sense, ask them to support us by subscribing to the service. And with Escriba, we were able to, for instance, fact-check all of Bolsonaro's statements while he was in office. So we accelerated our processes while we were developing that, because you can only imagine if we fact-checked 6,685 statements, you can only imagine how many of them we actually fact-checked, because we only documented the ones that were false or misleading. So yeah, this process was a bit traumatic also. And we were able to conduct live fact-checking, right? For instance, this is an example of our debate coverage last year, and without Escriba, it would probably be a chaos, because in 2018, we also made live fact-checking during the elections that year, and it took us over 16 hours to actually transcribe all the debate. And now we did that in 4 hours. So that's it. If you have any questions, you can ask me after. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tai. And the next speaker will be Carlos Echevarría from Maldita. And let's welcome.
Hello, everyone, again. So coming last is a good news and bad news, because the good news is that we see eye to eye on this, and I think that is very important, that we are all highlighting the same things. Bad news is that, of course, I gotta tell you a few new things, not to make this boring after lunch, but I will, no worries. So, Maldita.es, not gonna come again in that. Just for you to see that we have devoted some time to the issue of AI, and I want to start by agreeing with Pablo that it's very easy in our line of work and in everyone to go for the last shiny thing that everybody wants to fund, in this case, in this particular moment in the world, that is generative AI. But next year it will be another thing. Last year it was the metaverse. Anyone heard about that? Not anymore. And before that, that was another thing and another thing and another thing. So sometimes it's, it's useful to go into these discussions asking a few questions about yourself, like, what do we know about AI? And the truth is, being completely honest, being a reporter myself, but this also true for most engineers in the world, we don't know much about AI. We don't know. We are trying to ascertain the risks, we are trying to ascertain the possibilities, but we don't know much. But there are two things that we do know. The bad guys in this information, they are already using it as we speak. It's not a question of, no, they will. No, they are doing it right now. And yeah, some for sure are creating some or disseminating some cool pictures of the Pope in a wonderful code, but that is not really what we are talking about, right? They are using it for many other things. They are using it to make their disinformation better, harder to catch, to be more speedy at what they do. And then the second thing that we need is, that we need to acknowledge is that we need to do better as well. If the bad guys, the disinformation pushers, the guys running manipulative campaigns are using AI, we better learn how to do it. We better start using it to our advantage, the people fighting this information. So that's what Maldita has been doing. There's, some cool mascots and here. I think this, I'm gonna assume I lifted from the internet at some point, but I love the robots. The whole approach to automatization, and in this we go hand in hand with other colleagues at Aos Fatos and Chequeado, is putting humans where they matter. If you can avoid having someone filling a spreadsheet like the one I showed you yesterday, yeah, by all means, let's do that. That is not the best, something that people is excited about, but also that is something that maybe a machine can do better and without committing mistakes. But there are many other things that machines cannot do, and in my opinion, that I share with Tai, that they won't do in the future, right? So for us, always the problem of automatization, and now with AI, is to put our human hours where they matter. There is not an AI system that is gonna call to the priest in a church in the middle of Spain to ask if the church is on fire. That can only be done by a journalist. This is gonna be it. We have cool software that we all use in fact-checking to calculate, if the shade of a tree corresponds to a particular place in a particular time of the year. Okay, we might do that twice a year. But our team is every day on the phone, is going to places, is talking to people, is doing journalism in a way that AI will never do. So in that sense, I feel our jobs are safe for the time being. How AI can help fact checkers? And I feel like this is the key question probably that everybody is asking. Can AI help us? Oh yeah, immensely, in many different ways. For starters, in detection, like monitoring this information and doing narrative identification is very hard. It's a part of our job that, you can read, just as Pablo was saying, so many papers, you can look at, spend so many hours doing online. So we certainly need to use this technology to extract trends, to have a better understanding of the ecosystem, to put AI to work for us in putting in the hours of basic reading and monitoring. That is for sure. Also, one thing AI is very good at, through natural language processing and many other ways, is to synthesize and to produce summaries and to give you an idea of buzzwords, general narratives. All that can be done. And this, in the side of Maldita, we are already doing that, like trying, to get the summary, trying to get the bullet points from large swaths of information. Then, of course, in investigation itself, AI has much to offer. And in that, I could go again the way Pablo and Tai were insisting, oh, please, let's not reinvent the wheel every time. There is, not gonna name names, but there is a lot of institutions out there that they always want to fund the coolest tool. And sometimes oh, there is a tool that already works well. Should we go back to the beginning and do that? No, let's find the alternative in the market that is already working and use it. And in this particular thing, the possibilities that AI is bringing to be more effective at finding basic things in fact-checking, like location, provenance, whether something or not is synthetic media, this is going to change our work in the future, I think. Right now, as many fact-checkers are sitting with platforms are designing policies to say, for example, if something that is AI generated needs to be against their policies in general, right? Which I think is a bad idea, because I don't feel like necessarily anything generated automatically needs to be out of the platform. Why is that? Why, people can be creative, and that's cool. They need to, but what I mean with this is that as they design their policies, they are not 100% sure they are going to be able to spot it. They are going to be able to, with a higher degree of confidence, say, this was generated through AI-powered systems. So this is going to help us a lot, but we still have to do much work and much understanding. And if those bigger, massive companies with billions struggle to find an answer, fact-checkers are not going to find that answer for them. But we need to work with the ecosystem to make sure our priorities against this information are taken into account. Oh my God, I already talked for 8 minutes. I'm sorry. Dissemination. We need to be better at making sure whatever we already debunked, whatever we already produced and investigated is matched, and we are able to use that knowledge across the ecosystem. So if we already were able to debunk that a particular picture about an event was, for example, AI generated, we need to make sure that we get better at identifying the different formats that same lie has taken. And I think AI is going to help us immensely with that. Like if you, for example, have been able to ascertain that, this particular celebrity didn't punch a photographer in the face last week during that. So you have been able to say that. But you gotta be able, and you will be able through AI, to make sure you can bring that information across different formats. To the guy who generated an AI-powered content apparently depicting the moment the celebrity was punching the guy, but also the text message that contained the same claim, but also the apparent headline that someone has faked, like some traditional media was reporting on that. So AI is gonna help us identify all the different kinds of conversations that are happening around the same disinformation, right? And of course in research. I think there are many researchers in the room who are already very much aware that this can be a game changer to get all the data that fact checkers already produce and that other people in the disinformation, anti-disinformation community is producing, and put it to good use, right? Through AI systems that can tell us where we are working around the same circles, whether all the information we can produce can point in different directions in terms of authorship, manipulative coordinated actions, all that. AI is going to give us a lot of different ways. How in Maldita we are currently using AI is a different conversations. I love that so many people were talking here yesterday about the use of chatbots. For us, the conversation predates the use of AI in the sense that we felt that fact-checking environment in Spain was quite focused on Twitter because that's where most reporters and politicians are. But then again, Twitter had been super, and this was Twitter 1.0, being super, generous to them, maybe 4 million users in Spain. I don't think it was ever that. WhatsApp is plus 30 million users in Spain. Everybody use it. So we always thought we needed to be like more about WhatsApp and the conversation on this information there rather than Twitter. So when this happened, January 2022, March 2020, if you go quickly from 200 daily alerts to more than 2,000, and it went much worse than that in the next weeks of the pandemic. Really, automated solutions are not so much a choice as an imperative, because if you are unable to do that manually, it means that people is actually sending you things that they feel they are disinformation, and you are not responding. Is there anything worse that people, going for your help and not responding? So that's when automated action took over. This is what we have been doing for a while, to have a chatbot that basically, as you are probably all aware, from the perspective of the final users, it's like they send something to our chatbot, might be a real question. Is it true that the Minister for Education said this and that? Could be a voice note, could be a meme, could be a video, could be whatever, and the chatbot generally says, I think you are asking about this, so here's the link. Or the chatbot says, ooh, I don't know what you're talking about, I think I better contact my human colleagues and they can get to it. AI is already making this much easier and much more productive on our side, right? Obviously, the part of natural language processing has been much easier because we better understand what people is asking about. But also through AI-powered techniques of frame-to-frame matching, we are able, and like most of what we get these days, nobody ever, well, no, not nobody, but very few people actually come to us now with a questions. They just send media, they send content, right? So the AI power systems that allow us to do pixel by pixel identification of that has allowed us, for example, to debunk a video, and every time that video comes back cropped, or comes back with different subtitles, or comes back because someone was recording it from another screen, the matching is wonderful. And through improved AI matching, you get much more use of the work you are already doing as you have already done. And AI is being crucial in this, right? So this is what our dashboard looks like. I don't think it's very different from many of the things that you have been seeing today here, but for us, it is like the way it gets the alerts, it's completely changed the way our newsroom works, in the sense that we can make sure we are going for the things that are more violent in private messaging, that we are not letting our own biases as reporters to influence our selection of what we are to investigate, that we are actually going for the things that are creating more, more curiosity in the community we serve. Some of it's still manual, but in the last few months we are experimenting with a lot of things. Like normally we would, get the fact-checking team would get there in the morning and would see something like that, like this thing. It's a kind of a scam in WhatsApp. We have received so many times. It's already a well-known hoax. If we can classify it and tag it to an existing article, people start receiving it. That was the usual way of doing things that already contains some AI. But right now, we are working in an automated assignation of that, right? So we'll never remove the human factor here, because we think in fact-checking it's absolutely crucial that a real person is actually verifying most of these processes. But at the same time, the kind of things that we are already doing for our dashboard to actually propose our team things, it's very important. So right now, when my team is getting there in the morning and they see the dashboard, the dashboard is going to propose them, don't you think this really looks like this other hoax, this other debunk that we already did? Don't think we could classify this as a larger scale narrative that goes beyond the particular content and on a superior level? This is mostly what we are doing now. If you take a look at the different ways we work, this, for example, is what AI has allowed us to do. We have different videos or audios with different duration, but through the transcription services, the pixel-to-pixel, the sound identification, we can know that it's actually the same thing that is shared in that 33-second video and this 2 minutes 18 audio, because it has been cut and cropped, and one is a video and one is a voice note. But it's the same thing, the same core assertion, claim, you name it, right? So this has helped a lot. Obviously, when I think about researchers and I see the kind of mapping we do about the alerts, this could be for a particular content, all the different alerts that have been arriving during a particular week, I think. So it used to be that we could, and I always thought that this was quite cool, that we could map out the life cycle of a particular hoax and see how it was going up and coming down, and it was making a return and all that. But now it is through AI-powered systems that if we combine that with general narratives, this can tell us much more than the life cycle of a particular content. So now, when the Maldita's team gets to the dashboard, it's going to tell them, okay, over here, we not only have those particular hoaxes, those particular contents that are about Mike Gideon, former scientist at Pfizer, said this and that, or member of the parliament said this and that, is already putting all those different contents into a general narrative that is being proposed by a ChatGPT powered system. So for us, this can really change some of our approaches to foreign interference and coordinated campaigns, because generally what a coordinated campaign is about is not to make you convinced that Mike Gideon, Pfizer scientist, did say and say. Normally, the underlying intention is for you to think that COVID-19 was created as an instrument of social control. That particular narrative, like the higher space, that particular narrative has been proposed by ChatGPT-based technology after reading about the contents of our database. So now, in this, is proposing the person in Maldita, the human that is there checking the database, don't you think this particular new content that entered today clearly aligns with the general narrative of COVID-19 was created as an instrument of social control? So we think that will help us in the future. ChatGPT, but whatever we decide to go after this will help us to have, a wider lens into the future, right? Like to understand how certain narratives are pushed through different particular hoaxes to go from the particular content to the higher narrative someone is pushing out there. Because, for example, and it can go very general or can go very specific. This is, there is money being spent to help Ukraine that it's really necessary in Spain, right? There is only one content here when I check this, but as I recheck this, we have more than 4 different contents here. So these general categories are being bigger and bigger, and it gives you an idea about the different, higher hierarchies that goes into messaging for this. The same with the third one that has to do with drought. And the good thing is that, and I'm and I'm closing right now, the good thing is that they are not exclusive. They cannot be. This ChatGPT-powered system understand that the same content can be part of a narrative against weather manipulation and a narrative against globalist elites trying to change your life. So, but it can give you an idea of the higher conversations. I am sorry I went a bit over my time, but that was all for me. Anyone wishing, of course, to talk more about this?
Thank you, Carlos, for your wonderful presentation. And next we are Going to the QA session. Does anyone know that we have Slido? Today's code is 1413456. Okay. Okay, so I see a question I would like to ask Chequeado, so maybe Pablo will help to share your experience. It's about how do you develop the so-called AI-empowered framework in your institution? And because for fact-check institution, many fact-check institutions do not have enough resources to develop so engineering part. So do you have collaboration with government, industry, or academic? Okay.
Yeah, the short answer is that we don't collaborate with the government. That is the clearest one. And there were some offers. We have like a Ministry of Science, but the thing is that it's difficult to explain if we work with them and at the same time we fact check them, at least in a very polarized country as ours. So no, we are not working with the government. But yes, we are working with academics, we are working with researchers, we are working with developers that are not in our team. We have people in our team. I'm really happy about having developers in our team. I guess that is the same here, but that is kind of expensive. And for a non-profit, imagine the challenge of also at the same time maintaining that people in our team, and sometimes for 5 years, when they are, for there it's really easy to work in English for big companies outside Argentina and earning much more money. But so that is why we care a lot about the people in our team. And at the same time, we collaborate with maybe, I don't know, a developer that maybe is working for a company, but he or she's totally bored. They want to do something interesting. So sometimes we have some hours from other great developers. But usually it's academics. And as I said before, we use a lot of open source tools. Yes. So sometimes we met the open source tools in companies, in conferences, sometimes searching for that, but sometimes they knock our door. So it's a mix.
Yeah. Yes. So thank you, Pablo. Actually, from my experience, I think most of the process during a fact check can be helped by conventional CS techniques. For example, if we have a broadly crawler to crawl most of publications from social media, then we can use, for example, filtering techniques to help the fact-check institution to select which topic is more important or of interest to them. And maybe they can, for example, if we have a formal format to write fact-check reports, then maybe we can leverage ChatGPT or other language models to fastly create some reports automatically. I think the larger language model and the image-based recognition, so-called deep learning techniques can help many of these issues during fact-check. Okay, so thank you, Pablo. And the second question would be, sorry, let me check. Okay, so is there any challenges dealing with the visual misinformation such as video, image, and how do you think AI can be used in the future? I think this question can map to the Carlos presentation because currently I also doing some image-based research on, for example, some memes or some video propaganda in Taiwan. So I just wondering, how do you leverage the AI or specifically using which kind of techniques to achieve that you compare every video? I think it's computing intensive. Could you experience your, share your experience?
Yeah, sure. I think this is going to be like one of the key areas that is going to see more of an advancement in the coming years, because video is always regionally and language agnostic for the most part. You're going to have to track the audio track to compare, but mainly for our experience in the last years, it is obvious that some, internationally intended disinformation goes in video, because you don't need, if it's apparent enough, can be adjoined with some piece of small textual information that just, we saw that in Ukraine all the time. So I think we're going to have to, a lot of advances in provenance and synthetic media are going to happen in the next few years. What we are using right now is some third-party software that does pixel by pixel identification, because that's the way we found that it was going to be more effective to deal with things that were cropped or incomplete and all that. I realize it can work better, but it's already working much better than we thought in the beginning. And I think that's going to be particularly important, because during the worst days of the Ukraine crisis, we were getting maybe 85% of all contents that were flagged to us around video and image and still image. So and I say the bit about cropping, because we got of course a lot of memes that might change in only the subtitles or the actual text, but the image was the same. So in that sense, there are going to be large companies that get better at provenance in the coming years. But I think the technology that is existing right now is also not bad. Already empowers you to do a lot of things.
Yeah, sure.
Just adding one thing to that, we really care a lot about provenance, and I think that it will be much, much important if AI-generated image increase their reach, because if we have the provenance, we can see where it was started. A lot of big companies are working on that. Adobe, for example. I don't know if they are going to make it, but because it's really difficult. But it's very, very important.
Yeah, Adobe, there is actually this coalition for provenance that is doing stuff on that sense. It's not widely adopted yet, but I think it has some promise in it. But I think that some commercial solutions are going to come out. Like as many in the room, and as Pablo as well, I am also a lecturer, and we could all see like how this company that has been avoiding plagiarism for a long time, Turnitin, that almost every university in the world uses, they were so quick to go for solutions to identify AI-generated text in papers. So I think there is a lot of interest globally. And I say this because it's important for me to go back to the point that I and Pablo were making about not reinventing the wheel. Some in the commercial sector are for sure with much more, powder than we have. They are going to go for this, and we need to get, to get advantage of those working in that technology and use those things that are going to be used commercially elsewhere.
Yes, I think a number of questions is also talking about generative AI, for example, from deepfake video to currently large language model generated text, or even for example, using the DALL-E or some generative a photograph or some techniques to do that. So it's really a crucial question in fact check industry. So I would like to ask maybe from Tai, do you have any idea about how do you handle such computer generated maybe fake news or computer generated figures? How do you handle these issues in Brazil from your experience?
Yeah, Well, everyone, yes, it's working. It's challenging because I think that one of the great challenges regarding this is that we lack databases, right? What we do to make fact-checking more predictable and for us to plan ahead these information flows regarding some specific topics. And of course, the nature of these disinformation campaigns is by perceiving that they repeat themselves. And the topics, they are repeating themselves. And who is behind those topics? And if they have the power to, for instance, use such technologies to deceive the public. I think it's a novelty. We are not very sure about how to handle this at the moment. And from our standpoint in Brazil, for instance, every time we don't need AI-generated models for people to be deceived and for us to fact check it, because basically platforms have a hard time combating misinformation on videos and images that are not AI-generated. They are like actual pictures that are misleading the public with other descriptions, for instance. So, and we see that on Facebook and Instagram, for instance, in the third-party fact-checking program, we receive lots of complaints about the technology they are using for matching images, and sometimes they make mistakes. So there's the problem with finding out if that is AI-generated content, but also with matchmaking, right? Like trying to see if this is a repeating phenomenon, if it has been used in another circumstance. And I think that, at least right now, verifying such things is either a challenge, but without repetition, if image has never been published online, for instance, it's probably something that can raise some questions, like where did it came from? Who has the interest in publishing such things? So, I mean, it's a relatively new phenomenon, but as I said before, we don't need deep fakes. We actually need cheap fakes, and they will continue being there. So I don't know if it answers your question, but yeah.
I was going to add to that, like Tai mentioned something that I find absolutely crucial for this conversation, which is interest. Like generative AI, it doesn't serve for everything, but there is one thing that it does very well, which is replicate and find different enunciations or the same concepts. And some of the more heavily invested disinformation pushers in our world, their agenda is pretty clear, and their general lines of argumentation are very clear. So if that's what I like about the work we are doing with ChatGPT, that ChatGPT is really very good at providing you with the kind of natural language solutions that the same argument can have. So if we're able to use that to identify, that in many cases is going to bring us towards different ways of this, different contents of this information that might not have been, you know, an exact match of whatever we saw before.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. So, okay, there's because I see 5 or 6 questions about generative AI. So everybody is very anxious about this issue, I think. But I will go through another question. Is about can you share how do you start an AI product or AI framework in a fact-checking institution? Because it's quite difficult for maybe a journalism background expert to collaborate with engineering background engineer. So can you, I think it's open problem, so can you share more about this? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, if it's related with the second question, No, this one. The first one is moving, sorry. Moving target. No, is that the first question for me is if you need an AI product. And so every time, and this is a product management question, is what is the goal? What is the goal? The goal cannot be create an AI tool. The goal needs to be, I don't know, solve a problem. What is the problem that you need to solve? Because maybe it's not AI. Maybe it's an overkill doing something with AI. But let's say that, okay, you need an AI tool. The first thing for sure that you need to do is double check if that doesn't exist. Of if someone is working on that. If someone is working on that in the open environment, let's say it's an open source company or an university, maybe you have to reach them and tell them if that you are in the same area. One thing about that, and very practical, is that when we are talking about images, is, as Carlos says, is, I don't know, language agnostic most of the time. So that can be great for global collaboration. If you are talking about a language-oriented product, at least in our experience, that can be tricky even today to work through languages. There are things that works, but most of the things that really precise as, I don't know, knowing about the verbs and the past tenses and finding the little details of natural language processing is difficult to extrapolate from one language to another. That is my experience. But once again, first, what is the goal? If AI is the solution, maybe it's not the solution. So don't go trying to find an AI tool because maybe you need something easier. Because it's expensive to develop AI. So the great thing, and this is important, the great thing is that maybe today, for example, OpenAI has an API that is kind of cheap, but never forget that it can be really expensive maybe in 2 years because they are trying to gain traction and obtain users. That happened with a lot of tools. A lot of tools that started for free or kind of free, and maybe then afterwards you will end up with a big bill. So try to think like 2 years time, what is going to happen. And once again, trying to collaborate. Maybe the same tool is happening in another country, in another language. Just that.
Thank you, Pablo. And another question would be, it's about how do you identify potential coordinated behavior during the fact check? Because if we want to disseminate fake news or so-called misinformation, a number of organizations will employ fake accounts or a large number of accounts to disseminate that. So I just wondering, from your experience, do you ever use some computer skill to identify this or try to trace back their source during your fact check process? Okay, Tai.
So Aos Fatos that I showed was built exactly for that, with that premise that for us to battle misinformation, we have to tackle large-scale disinformation campaigns. And how we can find large-scale disinformation campaigns, either if they are spontaneous, but mostly aren't, or if they are actually coordinated, by monitoring in real time as many platforms as you can for you to see if there's the same thing or the same topics are being shared on those platforms. In general, if it is coordinated, it is. Even though sometimes those topics differ from each other depending on the platform, because many disinformers, they publish content that is very specific to some sorts of technologies. For instance, sometimes the same topic is being debated on WhatsApp and Instagram, but in different formats. Because in Instagram, you can use videos. Of course, in WhatsApp, you also can use videos. But for instance, in Brazil, we have a very bad connection problem. So sometimes it's more useful for you to use text. But if there are the same subject repeatedly during days being shared by a lot of profiles that we don't know the origin of, and sometimes by politicians because they engage in such campaigns, we are able to find out with radar. And these large-scale disinformation campaigns, you have to cover it very consistently because it gets predictable. At the end, you know who is basically the most engaging profiles and who are the super spreaders, who are the potentially fake profiles. All of these you can see with long-term monitoring, and that's what we try to do with HADA.
Okay, thank you, Tai. Yeah, because currently this is also one of my research topics. So we believe that we can crawl data and using, for example, 1 month to analyze the patterns or some underneath groups of accounts. But for example, for fact check, they are the real time is an essential topic. So it's not easy for us to deploy our research outcome to the fact check or so. So it's also an issue for me to promote our techniques to fact check. So I just have this question. And also, because too many questions about the generative AI, so I asked another generative AI. A number of questions is mentioned about the generative AI is currently, I think they said the LLM, large language model. They say that LLM is maybe they can do better in textual task, for example, to identify some text content. But generative AI may not be able to be as accurate in multimedia content, for example, image and video. So is there any sense or any insights from your side to share to combat the multimedia part of misinformation using the generative AI? Okay.
Yeah, I could say like from the part of design, there is a lot of work to be done in using, for example, the data that fact-checking organizations produce to better train those models and to make sure they prioritize quality information instead of sometimes making up a lot of stuff. I think some companies, for the perspective of the for the end user, they are already trying some of it, like Microsoft Bing, for example, that has been obviously trying to deploy ChatGPT, OpenAI technologies. They are already going with the idea of providing links to the in the responses that the search engine is giving you. You can actually consult the source of the information, which I think it's very important. But while that is attractive, and particularly from a search engine perspective, I think going into the future, we need to talk about how to better train those AIs so they are not agnostic in the sense of ascertaining sources of information. This is complicated. But as that conversation happens, I think the human factor is the most important thing. These massive companies, they haven't been able to have a good solution that can work, for example, for content moderation on social media and identify sarcasm, irony, like things that are much more basic than what we are talking about here. And yet, platform moderation in either Spanish or Portuguese, not the small languages, and is still a million miles away from the results in English. So I think we could all make good to use AI or AI power systems for the things that can be effective, but not be expecting that this is going to solve all the problems in the world, because there are some very basic problems that we haven't been able to solve, and it's been a few years now. So I don't think that's going to be different. But then again, to go back to the previous question, for sure, the question of accuracy has to be integrated, and the question of risk when it comes to this information has to be integrated in the design of the products and in the training of the models. I think that is very important.
Yeah, thank you, Carlos. And from my experience, I think I will also maybe agree with. I think all the speakers' thoughts that we cannot expect AI can help us to do anything about or one thing or two things about fact check. But I think AI can assist or can help to offload the conventional heavy loading of fact checker, especially the reporter or some manual labeling task. So from my side, because for example, I say that we can use computer science techniques to filtering, help us to select which topic to fact check, and help to do some routine works. For example, write a report, a template for fact check report, and ask the LLM to do that. I think the repetitive task is very easy for the AI. So they can assist us to accelerate the process. But I think AI, currently in my opinion, I do not think AI can replace the expert role in fact check, because it's about also about the credit of the institution. So, and another take-home message I will conclude that the three speaker is that if you want to employ AI in your institution, not only fact check, you need to first know how AI can do or what AI can do. Because if you do not analyze your problem or everything you will face or encounter during your daily work, then you just like to employ an AI that may not be so helpful for you. If you really know, for example, you know Midjourney can do what, you know ChatGPT can do what, and they are doing very good in which thing, then just ask yourself, then you can leverage those AI to the specific task. I think that would help a lot for your workflow. And okay, time's up. Okay, so let's have a biggest applause to our three wonderful speakers. And if you have any other question, just you can use the coffee time to have conversation with the speaker. Thank you very much.